All right, Jason Rona back here in the JConcepts garage for another vlog episode. This time we're with Paul Wynn. And Paul, we came back a few weeks ago from the Roar Fuel Nationals. It's a big one that we like to go to every year. Last couple of years you've been going, driving the van. This time kind of had a full van with you. We took the trailer as well, and talk to us about making that trip from Florida up to Oakland Mills.
Yeah, we got a new race trailer. This is the first long event we've had with it, and it was about a 17-18 hour drive. So we started planning a few days early, got everything loaded up, and then I think it was Lee Setzer, Hannah, Julian Olivares, and then Julian's mom with us. So we had a full van and had a good time. It's not so bad driving that far when you have that many people, and Lee's a pretty entertaining guy. So we had a good time and made the drive in 2 days. So we just went up, drove about 14 hours the first day, and then another 3.5 the next day, which was Wednesday was the official or unofficial practice day, and it wasn't too bad.
For an event like this, it's probably our biggest usage event of the year. It's probably our biggest team driver attended event of the year. We probably have between 30 or so drivers there, so we have to really stock up on the different types of product we're bringing in to support the team. And that's why we brought the trailer we brought the van, because you don't use everything at an event like this, but you have to prepare for changing conditions, things that can happen, rain, anything that can happen out there. So talk about that side of things where you're kind of preparing, the list of product to bring and, kind of get the trailer loaded up.
Yeah, being an outdoor event, it's 4 days. I think we had 38 drivers, and luckily we had, you went to the Mugen Challenge in Mayfield, and Adam Drake and a few guys, and then they also had a warm-up a few weeks later. So we had an idea of what the surface was going to do, but with it being outdoors, you just have no idea with the weather. The LCRC crew did an amazing job. The track was really consistent, so we basically were able to run blues and aquas pretty much the whole event. We had some weather the last day, which kind of threw a wrench in it a little bit, but that's actually the best the track was. The track crew did an amazing job getting the track back together. We really didn't think we were going to be running, and next morning we were on a amazing surface. I actually preferred that over what we originally had, but yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, I mean, we've been there several times, and to kind of rewind a little bit, like you said, Dakota ran the warm-up race there, and he gave us some feedback after the race. He did win the buggy class there. He ran strong in Truggy, but when we did the warm-up and Dakota came back, and I believe Jared won the warm-up in the Truggy class, and they did some testing afterwards and stuff, and he kind of came to us, and Dakota was like, hey, I think this techno style body for the Truggies is an advantage. He didn't think it was life or death, but he kind of felt like, hey, if this is something that can be done and that could happen, he would sure appreciate it, and I'm sure the other drivers would as well. But that's where we kind of started with some messages from Dakota. Our conversation we had at the Silver State, which is, hey, this is coming, it's going to happen. It's not going to just be the techno out there with this behind tower body situation on the Truggy. So kind of from there, that's where we started, right?
Yeah, I mean, watching Jared the last few races, he's been doing really well. Like, I don't think it's just because of the body. He's just been putting in the work, and the new Truggy is working really well for him. And but when you're winning, it makes a difference. Everything looks better that way. So during the warm up, they were running top 3, top 4, which was Jared, I think, Lutz and Dakota, and battling back and forth. And unfortunately, Dakota had a flame out, so he was able to watch the last few minutes of the race, and he thought Jared's truck looked like it was smoother through the turns, wasn't jumping as high. And so he, got in touch with you and told you that, he thinks that there is an advantage to the body. And, like you said, we were already discussing that. And So we got to work, and it was a really short period of time. I think it was less than 2 weeks. And, we started on the body and came up with this, Truggy, Buggy looking thing. And I think it's really cool looking. I prefer seeing the bigger, older body. When I first walked up to the track and saw the big truck running, I was like, it looks like a different scale. It's a bigger, vehicle. But now seeing this, seeing it in the pits, seeing the suspension work on the track, it's really cool.
So to rewind even further, one of our starts was during the height of the pandemic last year. One of the projects we gave Ryan was, hey, let's take an 8-scale buggy that you're running and put a Truggy chassis on it. We'll make you a custom S15 extra long body for this buggy. And he was going to go out and do some speed runs, which he did. He tore it up a little bit and had some fun with that. We did some video with Ryan, but we kind of were already moving this direction about a year ago, inadvertently, but that's kind of where we started. We had this long buggy body, and the idea was, hey, let's work from here, and we know it fits the Truggy. And then the complexity of, okay, now we got the Mugen Truggy, we know we got to have Ryan out there and Adam Drake, we know we got to have Spencer covered with the Associated, we know we got to have Dakota covered with the TLR. So now it was the complexity of adding the 3 trucks to the equation, how we were going to get the one to fit on the 3 trucks, and potentially more in the future. But we knew we had to cover those for the race, and we knew we wanted to have some kind of truck cab on it. We knew we needed the front, the front piece, in front of the front shock tower. So, kind of from there, this thing kind of started taking shape, right?
Yeah, I mean, we did throw the buggy body on there without the cab. It just had the buggy cab on there. And, it was hard to envision at first. But, once we started piecing things together, and we put we actually used a T6 cab, narrowed it up, put it on top of the buggy, the long buggy body that you mentioned. And, then we worked on the nose cone. And, we wanted a true truck nose cone, not just a little block in the front. So we used the T6 front piece as well. And it started to come together, and after seeing it for about a week or so, then I really started to like it, and we went from there.
So then we kind of leaned on our painters, Larry Genova, Dark Side Designs, Bradley's Fine Line. We got these bodies to them, and they turned them around quick, like they normally do for something like this. We got them to the race. Dakota got his mounted. Spencer, Mayfield, we got our adapter piece to run our front body mount higher where we wanted it to be, and we got these things out there. There was a situation where Ryan's baggage got lost, so he didn't have his Truggy for the first day of practice. He used Adam Drake's Truggy just to get some laps, but then I happened to go to the airport for him in Baltimore, picked up his bags, dropped them off at 2 a.m. The next day I slept in, and he hit the track with the Truggy. And he had the body on it, and he did a little bit of his own comparing right away. And, you were there in the morning, and I know it didn't come off the truck.
Yeah, it was, it was a little bit of a panic mode when that happened. But luckily, with Adam having the same vehicle, Dakota, completely different vehicle, and then the Associated is similar to the Mugen. So I had a template for each vehicle. It was allowed us to get things going early for them. And then once, Mayfield got his luggage late, we were able to get that on there and get him out there. He did try the standard body, and he did 2 practice runs with that, and then he switched over to the new body. And like you said, it never came off after that. He was really impressed the way it handled, and so, he stuck with it.
And it's something that he's always had for us. He's had a little knack for being able to debut things with a win. So we put a little pressure on him there. We brought out a body in 2009, the Punisher that you worked on. At the time we were calling them the tadpole bodies because that was the low-C trend that they started at the time. We got the Punisher done. We went through the period where people didn't like them and they were making fun of it. But as soon as he won with it, it became now this is the new standard. So we got a little pressure on him. He's got a habit of delivering with these new products. But we went through qualifying there in Truggy. And, he did a good job. We got a shortened round. We didn't get the last round in because of the rain, but he got the TQ.
Yeah, he was battling with Dakota and Ty. They Ty was running the regular body, so it's still capable. And yeah, I think they all had a TQ, or Ty might have had 2 seconds. So it was it was really cool to see the two different styles battling out. And I think Ryan really thrives when it has something new like this to debut. He really wants to prove a point and prove that it does work. And so he went out there and kicked some butt with it. And Dakota followed up right there in second or third, I believe, in qualifying. So it was a good debut.
So before we pull into the mains here, we'll talk a little about the buggy class, because that was obviously Nitro's the glory. That's what is online. We hear, and it is. It's people love the Nitro buggy class, but a little different. We still got the 3 rounds of qualifying. Didn't come as easy for Ryan. He struggled a little bit with a breakage in a round and just not running his best. I think a little bit of just not as much track time maybe as he could have had, or just braking kind of throws off your rhythm. But qualified down in the 7th spot. But in the nationals, we run the semifinal format, where it's a half an hour semifinal and then the 60-minute A final. But in qualifying, as he's been doing a lot this year, Dakota put in great runs again, and he was really the class of the field in qualifying. People didn't know if they were going to be able to keep up with him. But talk to us a little bit about qualifying, Dakota's runs, and we had a lot of other guys running fast.
Yeah, I mean, it was, again, Dakota got to do the warm-up, and a few of the other guys did, but, you could tell when Dakota hit the track, he had the speed right away. That particular track it's a little more 10 scale-ish. Mm-hmm. Even though it's a big, beautiful track, it's very smooth, stays together, very consistent, whereas, most of the 8-scale tracks we've been to earlier this year, they're rough and big, and it's a little tougher to get around. But Dakota just seemed unbeatable through practice and qualifying. Like you said, Mayfield struggled a little bit, maybe trying to figure out which tires to go with, and having the 1 round short really hurt him, but he was able to still qualify 7th, like you said, and be in a good position for the semi. Other guys like Spencer and some of the techno guys, Joe Bornhorst and Seth Van Dalen, who kind of had some issues early and was able to bump up, so that was pretty cool to see. It was a really interesting qualifying, and Ty was probably the most consistent. Mm-hmm. It looked like he was going to be the guy to beat once we got through qualifying, other than Dakota. But it seems like the guys that TQ and go straight into the main kind of struggle a little bit. It's almost a little bit of a disadvantage, and you could see where Dakota made a few little bobbles here and there at the beginning, but had amazing speed. So it was a good race all around.
Yeah, so we'll explain that a little bit. When we run this format, whoever's the overall TQ traditionally goes straight to the A main, and then the rest of the 2 semifinals, there's 5 from each semifinal go directly to the main, and then your next 2 fastest drivers, that's 12 cars, and then plus Dakota's the TQ makes the 13 car field. So most of the rest of the field has to race their way in, which is usually very beneficial. I don't know how many of these races we've done, and even the organizers and things at times. I mean, the Worlds has changed their position on this a few times, and and even Roar and everybody else has changed. All right, do we put 1 guy in the main? Do we put 2 guys in the main? There was a time where it was 4. The top 4 went to the main, and then everyone else bumps up. So nobody really knows what exactly is the right format here. But one thing that I've noticed over time is if you're going to win the thing, you kind of need to run the semifinal, I feel like. And if you break out and you don't make the main, it's not your weekend. But you really do need that time on the track. And there's a few guys, of course, that have broken that curse or whatever you want to call it, that TQ, go to the main and win it. But it's definitely not as easy. And you feel like you watch the driver that TQs, he's got to walk around, he's watching all these races, he's just sitting there, he hasn't been on the track in hours and hours, and it's almost like you can see they're getting a little antsy. They don't know if they need to make changes by what they're seeing. Do they go with what their gut feeling is? And and you can see a lot of that when we do these races.
Yeah, it makes it really tough. I mean, it, I think it was the Worlds in Argentina when Elliott Boots completely dominated qualifying and ran the semi and had a servo or something go out, and he didn't even make the main. So that's when they decided to change the rules a little bit and have them go the TQ directly into the main. And like you said, when you TQ, it's nice knowing you're going to get to run, because there's situations like Mayfield's had the last 2 years where he's been one of the dominant guys, and he's broke or had an issue in the semis and hasn't made the main the last 2 years. So it's really tough to decide what's better, but I would like to see where the TQ guy is guaranteed a spot in the main but still has to run the semi. Mm-hmm. And that way he can get out there and race with the guys, and he knows he's going to be in the main, but maybe he doesn't have a great semi and he finishes 5th or 7th or breaks, but he's in the main. And his starting position could be based on the way he finished.
Yeah, I think that's an ideal situation. It gives you your spot in there. It takes that pressure off of having to run the semi, break, and not be in it. But you get the track time that's needed to really win the thing. It seems like the majority of the time.
Yeah, they do get there's a warm up for each semi, so they have an A and a B semi warm up, and the TQ does get to run in that semi, so they can try tires and kind of get a feel. But you just the time span is so drastic when you get to do that, versus when you're actually racing. It's it's really tough. And I think Ty even mentioned it during his qualifying, is he almost didn't want to TQ one of the rounds so he could run the semi. So there's definitely a lot to think about as a driver, and when you're when you're racing, and it definitely weighs on these guys.
And when you have when you're waiting or anticipating a long main like this, it almost seems like when you come out of a semi and you make it out, you also feel like you've had that track time with other cars. You've been in the battle, you've had the nervousness already, you've had sort of that moment of, oh, am I not going to make it? Am I running well enough? And you've kind of went through some of these ups and downs, and then once the main hits, you've kind of already had all these emotions, and now once you're in the main, you can just kind of let it hang out a little bit more.
Yeah, that's definitely a big difference, is getting to run and battle with guys, and get a feeling for what you can and can't do. Makes a big difference as well going into the main.
So we prep going back into the mains. We go back to the Truggy main, 45-minute A main, and Ryan was the TQ. And typically what these guys do is they do, we talked about earlier, there is an A main warm up. So Ryan went out. He had a set of tires that he had ran in the last round of qualifying. He wanted to get a few more laps on them, and then this is the opportunity during the warm up where they got the clutch and they do all the maintenance things and make sure it's performing right. Then we get into the main, and it's about the heat of the day. We were really approaching that 1 o'clock range in the afternoon when the track was getting warm, and that's usually that time when you start thinking about tire compound changes. Sure. And and all this starts affecting your psyche as racers and drivers, and what do you do and what do you go to. But Ryan stuck with his qualifying setup. He stuck with the tires he ran in the 3rd round plus the warm-up, and he took off in the main, and it looked great from the first lap.
Yeah, that was one of the things with the weather that we had. The track was early on, before the weather, the track was dusty. I'd say medium traction, and was fairly easy on tires. You could get away with different patterns and different compounds, and all were pretty close. But then after the rain and on Sunday, the track was actually more like an indoor track. It was very smooth, grooved up, and one of the things that Mayfield noticed is, he was running his old qualifying tire, so he had, roughly 10 minutes on them. He ran them in the 10-minute warm-up and practice, and as he ran them, they just kept getting better. So he had, 20-plus minutes on the tires, and he's like, these things are just awesome. So that's when he made the decision that, I think lower pin is the way to go. So, going into the 45 minutes, with 20-minute plus tires, we were kind of like, well, let's see what happens. We weren't sure. And he just got faster. He put in an amazing run. Dakota put a little pressure on him early, And once he kind of got control of the race, he just clicked off laps. Had very little issues, and I think he turned his fastest lap like 3 laps to the end.
Yeah.
When the tires were starting to slug out. So that that was a big change for us when we realized that a lower pin tire and almost slicks were going to be faster than a pin tire.
Yeah, several times we've had this happen at races like this where Ryan, once he gets the groove, once he finds his groove and he's in the groove, the tires are warm, the track is staying relatively consistent through the race. He starts to feel almost more comfortable with the really low tread during these races because they don't catch as much. They don't traction roll. They don't hit the ruts. This track was smooth, but there's still scaling going on, and we had that real rough, like little rhythm section on the right side, and different sections of this track that he just feels like when he gets in a rhythm and the tires get up to temperature and they get low, that he just feels like in certain situations that it actually starts to work better.
Yeah, one of the things that we noticed as well is, when you do run a big pin tire like that, so it'll last 45 minutes or an hour, that the car's usually pushy and lazy, and you have to wait for the tires to come in. And when going out on the used tires, they were there already. He was able to get going and get comfortable and get the speed that he wanted, and then from there he just kept getting faster and more comfortable with it. And that's something that we've struggled with in the past is, do we go with a tire that's going to last an hour or 45 minutes, or do we go with something that's going to be fast? And it's bit us a few times, and Mayfield made the comment before this race and the last race is he's like, what, I just want to have the fastest tire on the car, and then I'll deal with it after that. And it paid off, and that was definitely the right call.
So, a nice kind of wire-to-wire victory in truck. I believe that's his 6th Truggy national title. I think he won one with a Kyosho when Associated didn't have a truck. Then he won 2 with the Associated. He won 1 with the Losi and now 2 with the Mugen. And, one of them was before we had tires. And but 5 of them now have been with the tires, and so it's been a great class for Ryan to scoop up these national wins, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down at all, and wire to wire, and I don't think he made a mistake in the whole race.
Yeah, he never had to get marshaled, and he had maybe 1 or 2 bobbles in a 45-minute run, and they were just pushing wide or bumping off a pipe, but it was pretty impressive. The other cool thing is, this is basically a same truck from 2019.
Yeah.
Just a few minor, upgrades, and to do this body, we actually used his 2019 winning truck, and everything was exactly the same. So that made it really easy for us to make the body for him.
So we prep now, for the Buggy, the semifinals, which we got 1 30-minute semi, another 30-minute semi. The guys are split by odds and evens, but the first semi, we had Cole Ogden kind of took off. He was gone. And Aiden Horn kind of worked his way up there in the end and kind of got his rhythm going, which would be beneficial in the main later. But, we got through that race. We got into the next semi, which Ty and Ryan was in. There were some lead changes going on in that one. Ultimately, Ty was in the lead, and then Ryan settled for second in that one. But I think he was thinking, worst case scenario, I'm starting 4th here in the A main. Dakota, Cole, Ty, and himself. He would have been 4th. But, we had some situations in the semis where guys didn't pass through tech after, many, checks with the tank. But, we were all there. There was, a real uncomfortable situation. There's 40 or 50 people maybe watching in tech, not only people doing the tech, but just people watching. And it's got to be nerve-wracking for the tech people just not being able to do this alone, but people over their shoulder and dads watching and everything else. But in the end, they know what their rule is, and they gave them ample time to cool down. They also did 4 checks for each of these guys. So obviously you've run nitro on-road races, run some nitro off-road, but it was the hottest part of the day right after Truggy. It's blistering out there. These guys are obviously having great runs. Cars are super hot, get some tank, maybe expansion going on, which has happened. There's been Worlds TQs thrown out in the past because of these same situations. So, what'd you see down there is a little hectic. Obviously, everybody has their own take going on, but, you feel bad for the racers, but at the same time, they gave them a lot of opportunity to get it right.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing, but one of the things that I did notice throughout the event, all through practice and qualifying, certain guys were checking their tank, multiple times, going through tech, not even when it was their race, they were going up there and checking. And I heard several people say, whoa, my tank that I had, from, the previous race, tech fine, and then at this race, it's not. So, there is consistency issues with, from one race to another as far as their measuring equipment and stuff like that. Now, Roar has been using the same measuring equipment for years. Yeah. So the guys that went and did their homework and made sure to check their tank multiple times and, give themselves a little leeway. I know Mayfield and Truggy, talked about it. They noticed the same thing as, from Vegas, their tanks were, not the same as here. So they gave themselves a little extra room going into the semis and qualifying in main. So it was, it was a hectic thing. And, these Roar guys, they have everyone looking at them, staring over their shoulder. Like you said, the dad's there. They're telling them they're doing it wrong. They need to be doing it this way and that way. And these guys don't want to disqualify anyone. It's because they know it's going to come back on them. So that was unfortunate, but, the racing itself was still really good. It was cool to see some of the young guys get up there and battle and make the main. And so, it was overall still a great event.
Yeah. And I think, going into the main, we had, still a stacked field. Basically, Dakota was sitting there the whole time. This added another hour to his wait at least. And it's sitting for TQ. Now that moved Ryan to second. And, kind of stacked up the field a little bit differently. But, in the end, I remember being back in the pits and Ryan, telling Mike, his pit guy, he's like, you know what, we're going to add some more stuff to our tank so that, after the 60 minutes, we're, make sure that we pass because I don't want to go through the same thing that these guys went through or that he had just gone through. He knows the race is going to be long, 60 minutes. He's like, let's pit a little sooner. He decided to pit at 6:40 instead of 7:30. And, this kind of stuff, when I'm hearing this going on and, kind of consult a little bit, and you consulted as well, but it starts to remind you of things where things go wrong for people and they kind of learn from mistakes and they start to see these things happen. And then now guys like Ryan, he's like, look, I've had this happen to me before. I've ran out of gas during long races. I've had all these things happen. So he kind of made a little bit of a judgment call there and said, I'm just going to, change the way I'm doing this a little bit. I'm going to pit a little sooner and make sure this tank's going to be legal through the whole event. And it ends up working out there.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. And, you could definitely see the maturity in Ryan's preparation and racing. He's won and lost races just about every way you can. And this race in particular, like you said, the preparation he took, after the semis for the main was awesome, to see. He talked to Adam, he talked to Truggy, and, they had a game plan and it worked out. He made sure after learning what he did for Truggy with the tires, he did the same thing for Buggy. He actually went with a softer compound, knew it was going to wear, and, pitted a little early and, went for the speed and the extra pit stop, and, it worked out well. It did get a little nervous when, Aiden Horn was coming. He was amazingly fast. He was doing one less pit stop, and so it got a little dicey, but, Ryan stayed strong and kept it going.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that, makes me think of when we go to races like this, or we're at the Worlds, and they have this technical inspection of your tank, and you have to pass after races, not before. Sometimes they do pre-tech at Dirt Nitro Challenge and other things, and then post-tech here where they do this at the Worlds. But people you see on Facebook and social media, they're out running, they're running regional type events, and like, I just went 11 minutes, I just went 10 minutes, I went 12 minutes, but they're not doing it under technical inspection, right? And with the idea that I'm going to run a long race, it's hot, I'm going to this fuel tank's going to expand, and all these guys wonder sometimes what happens at a big race. Well, this is what happens at a big race is now stuff has to work according to the rules. You have to pass through tech, and you just can't be out there with the way it comes out of the box and doing your 11-12 minute runs with no pressure. This is with everything on the line, hot conditions, and you got to make the adjustments.
Yeah, another thing that people don't realize is the pace that these guys run. They're running 2-3 seconds a lot faster than some of these other guys, and when you're running that much faster, that much more traction, you're pulling the trigger that much more, they're using a lot more fuel than the average guy is going to be using too. And sometimes guys forget that. And I've had this, and I know you've had this before, where I'm at home watching live RC, watching Mayfield or one of our guys, and I'll start getting texts, what's he doing, why is he doing this, if I was there he'd be running 10-12 minutes. It's like, it's completely different when you're there and running at the paces these guys run.
So we're in the main 60 minutes. Ryan has a little battle with Dakota early. Dakota cases a jump, kind of drops back, and but these guys are probably the fastest too in the main with Aiden Horn. Aiden kind of worked his way up. He qualified in a good spot after semis, and then he just really hung on to Ryan there. Had about an 8-9 second cushion there most of the race, and I know Ryan was monitoring it himself while driving and watching. He had Adam pitting him along with Truggy, and they were watching the gap. They were watching his mileage. He was doing his 640 stops, and Aiden was able to drop one on him. But in the end, Ryan, pulled out a little larger lead and a little more comfortable margin. But you do those last 4 or 5 minutes in a 60-minute race, and you're just, I can't imagine what you're thinking as a driver. But as a spectator, you're just like, come on, car, like, finish the race, right. Like, no problems here, right?
Yeah, that's we've seen it so many times where you think you've had it won, or you have it won, and a servo goes out, or the fuel tank didn't get full on the last pit stop, or that's various things that happen. So yeah, all these things are going through your head while you're watching. I can't imagine the driver after 45-50 minutes of a flawless run, and then you're coming up on lap traffic, tires are low, guys are having trouble with whatever. And he actually, I think, in the last minute, he kind of got taken out on one of the jumps, and I was really freaking out because I knew he was on low tires, and but yeah, he stayed poised, he didn't freak out, and stayed with it and got going again, and took it to a victory.
So that kind of wraps us up. We get the double win. Ryan went home. He took some pictures for us of his first Roar National Championship, which was his 2006 Thunder Tiger 8 scale. He won with that up in North Carolina.
Yeah, that's the first time I actually saw that buggy, was when you showed me the picture of that, and I was kind of blown away with that thing. I did notice, the Larry Genova paint job. I was like, okay, that's definitely Ryan's car. But, looking at it was like, wow, this is, it's come a long way. And, that was kind of cool to see, this going back to the body stuff, seeing the old body versus the new body, and everyone freaking out. And now we're going through that with the Truggy stuff. And, yeah, it was really cool to see he finally got that buggy win.
Yeah, like you said, he's been through it all. Been leading by a lap at halfway through, and receiver problems, and anything there's been able to happen
anything.
Everything and anything has happened to him out there. So it's nice to see him be able to capitalize on it, get the double win, and but now we're done. That race is over. We're moving on to the next one. For you, what's next on your calendar?
We have the the Buggy Nationals at SS Hobbies and Raceway, which is Lee Setzer's home track. We just had an INS there, a few months ago, so we know that track is, always in top shape. It's great traction. It's another 10 scale style track, so you're not going to have a really rough blown out track, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And then after that, it's just, the schedule is crazy. I think you're going to do the INS this coming weekend. Then we have the Nationals, and then we have Wicked Weekend. We have so many other races. So
yeah, we're kind of getting into the schedule. Things that did not happen last year are happening this year. Last year we were able to kind of pick and choose because there was some things being deleted, but this year everything's kind of back and it's right on top of each other for the most part on the calendar. But we look forward to the Nationals that's coming up next for you, and for me the INS out at Hobby Action. And we appreciate everybody for joining us here. Once again, like, subscribe, and ring that bell here on YouTube. That really helps us. And we'll see you next time.